Jackson Pollock. Where do I begin with the story about Jackson Pollock showing up in my psychic mediumship space and me beginning to visit with him? I think probably the first thing to say is that in all the work that I've done over all the years of doing my psychic mediumship work and working with so many different people and working with so many different beings and light beings on the other side of the veil, channeling people like Henry Kissinger and channeling and talking and working with people like the energy of like Jackson Pollock. And I know there's more coming because I can feel them waiting in the wings. Like, these are like the last beings that I ever thought I would be talking with and working with. But I think probably the best place to begin this story, this visit about my experience with Jackson Pollock is like, it's all intertwined with my art. And so if you don't know me and you haven't been following along with me, number one, I am a professional working psychic medium who has primarily put her energies into interpersonal many relationship, body-based many relationship. And for about the last year, I've also been helping with the movement, the awakening movement, and providing my expertise for all the basic information, doing psychic readings and energy forecasting and all of that. And Spirit Team is having me shift all of that. And so that's the background. And about middle of the summer, my Spirit Team had me do this hard right-hand turn. And I went back and looked at the dates on it. This happened in July of 2025. And I started having this art revolution in the middle of all the chaos going on the planet right now, and especially in our country. I had my art revolution begin to happen, like for no logical reason whatsoever. And that began in, middle of July, like mid to third week of July. And I checked the date on this, by the third week of August, all of a sudden, Jackson Pollock started showing up in my energy space to work with me on my art. And when I say he showed up, that is an understatement, because this man who the energy of who Jackson Pollock is, he literally came in like the energy came in just screaming and loud and dominant and angry. And I was not prepared for that, because I work with archangels and ascended masters and divine ETs and a whole different scenario of light beings on the other side of the veil. So to have Jackson Pollock, just like bam, just like punch through, that was really unnerving. And I wasn't sure that I wanted him in my space, right? So that was the beginning. And, as he was coming in, like the couple of days around as he was coming in, I was doing some errands, running around in public, and I had experiences of these, Gen X boomer white males driving around in convertible muscle cars, just like in my face. And I kept seeing cigars and cigarettes hanging out in the air, and I could kind of smell it. And there was this whole toxic white male thing going on, right? And that was the energy that Jackson came in on. And so it was kind of like undeniable that the energy space and the physical space was all set up for him to come in, right? And when he came in, so I could feel him in my energy space, and he was in my energy space for a couple of days, and I was like, I'm not sure like that I like this, and Spirit Team, and my Spirit Team really wouldn't talk with me about it, and like, do I get out my sage and like move this guy out? Like, I really had all of those thoughts of like, what the heck is going on here? And in the meantime, I'm like, doing my art and doing my channeling and, working with clients, like, I still had all of that going on, right? Well, during one of my watercolor sessions, because I'm through my art revolution, I'm really trying to find my focus as far as what kind of artist am I. And at that time, it was really landing in watercolor and then texture art. Those are like the two areas that were really coming up. So I was back in my, what I call my creative room, my studio room, and I was doing watercolor, and I was beginning to find out that if I opened up the intuitive airwaves, I could hear spirit team, and sometimes they came in and they would literally give me instructions with my art. So like my art wouldn't turn out like total crap, right? They give me instructions and I do them, and it's like, oh, that's kind of nice. And in the process, I'm learning about things, learning the technicals and, learning things about watercolor and how it works, right? Well, Jackson had been hanging out for a couple of days, and so I'm back in my office, back in my creative room doing my watercolor, and I feel him come in, and I feel him hang over my shoulder, and I'm like, fuck. Even at that point, I was like, ooh, he's a pretty accomplished painter. Like, I don't know that I want him hanging out over my shoulder. And he started telling me things about who I am as an artist that I didn't even know about myself. That was pretty cool. Because up to that point, like, I was being pretty timid about everything. And he literally was over my shoulder telling me to, like, unleash it, just let loose, right? I'm like, okay, but you got to understand, it's like kind of like one of those little postage stamp watercolor notebooks. And if you recall, he's like a really large canvas splatter paint artist. It really felt like huge splatter paint trying to narrow it down into like this little watercolor notebook. And the next thing I knew, he had me like doing washes of red and then taking my brush and splattering, like, and not just not just the nice sprinkle. He's like, no, take this sucker outside and just like go at it. He's just like, let yourself out on the page, Dana. Like, he gave me permission to be a lot larger than I was allowing myself to be, simply because, like, how can I be large with art if I'm really coming to it really for the first time in my life? Like, art's been kind of coming and going off and on through my life in different things like textiles and graphic design and calligraphy, like all these different areas. It's always kind of leaked through, right? But this is like, me middle of this summer, 2025, this is me really for the first time just really connecting with form and texture and color and paint and, like attempting to put it together in some kind of way. And so he's like over my shoulder, like literally kind of egging me on, like just, let it go and explode and unleash. And like, it was a lot. And so I did the best I could. And then on towards the weekend, I was like, well, maybe I try this with a larger canvas and do some acrylics and splatter paint, and I'll take it outside. And I did that right around twilight. And that was really satisfying. The visual is kind of like, but the energy of it and what I felt and, what went onto the canvas, I'm like, I'll never forget just really just splatter painting on that thing and just feeling that sense of amazement with it, right? And so at that point, I'm thinking, well, this has been nice. Jackson has come through, and usually like light beings, they kind of like come and they go, and end of story, right? And I thought he had shown up maybe to help me out with a few initial things. Well, not the case. Like, Jackson Pollock has literally been hanging out with me off and on since the end of August, people. It is now the back end of September, early October, right? And so he's just been revolving through, primarily about my art. But then I've also been noticing he's been hanging out, like paying attention to who I am and what I'm doing and how things work spiritually. And there's been times I've literally felt like him hanging out and absorbing like knowledge and wisdom and, oh, this is how things work, and oh, if I'd done it differently, and like I literally could feel him in my space, soaking it up, transforming and healing and teaching himself and growing just from freaking being in my space. So then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, oh, he shows up, kind of does some art coaching with me, but at the same time, he's also receiving some of his own, like my words, not his words, but some of his own transformational redemption. Because like, I did go read up on him some and look up on him some and, start learning about that a little bit. And yes, even though he is an accomplished artist, he had a lot of help. He had a lot of support. His splatter painting, that came from Janet Sobel. He took Janet Sobel's idea and then took that on himself and went ahead and did his own thing with that. So Janet Sobel has never fully gotten the credit she deserves for the influence that she's had on Jackson Pollock. So that's woman, that's woman number one. Woman number two, Guggenheim, Peggy Guggenheim. Once she found Pollock's work, she funded him. She got him gallery showings so he could begin to have some visibility. So that's woman number two. Woman number three is his wife, Lee, as I'm trying to recall, Lee Krasner. And credit is due to her for like helping him keep his shit together so he could have a career, and I've just finished doing the channeling with him and editing. And I can hear him out in energy space kind of like, he's like, yeah, that's true. Like my wife helped me keep my shit together so we could actually put a life together. And so I could do my art and at least make a good run of it. And so Lee sacrificed her own art for a while, or her own art life for a while, so Jackson could have his. And then on the back end of it, so that's woman number three. And then on the back end of it, I've also learned that the CIA evidently had some operative going, again, for the Cold War, where they were supporting and promoting and funding impressionist artists and really getting them going and funding them with their work. And that is another reason why Jackson Pollock had the career that he had, because on the secret, on the backdoor secret, CIA was funding a chunk of his work, evidently. So like, I take all of that into account and go like, oh my God, if I had 3 people supporting me free of charge, and then funding coming in from all over the place, like, good God, like the successes I could have, the successes you could have. Like, to me, it kind of puts it into the reality check, it kind of bursts that bubble a little bit and puts it into a reality check. And so as Jackson is hanging out in space with me and he's beginning to coach me more on my art, and I'm learning about him, the life he had, really truly the life he had, and the type of artist he is, and yes, the incredible work that he did with what he was given. I'm soaking all of that up, but I'm also noticing that he is soaking up being in my energy space as well. And so this had me begin to go, what's going on with this? Like, what is going on with the next step in the psychic mediumship experience of two-way street? So I've been thinking about that off and on for a while. And then you have all seen me begin to make my shift out of the space that I was in more towards the art. And then this thing coming out of the blue about doing psychic mediumship with notable people. And the first person that my spirit team set me up with was Henry Kissinger. We've already done that. That one's right here. Well, it was like a no-brainer, of course. Pollock is going to be the next one on the list, and especially Pollock because my whole platform right now is a connection between interpersonal body-based money relationship, art, somatic art, healing with somatic art, how healing with somatic art connects up with the money, and healing with somatic art and somatic money, those are all connected up. And now I'm channeling notable people like Jackson Pollock sits right in the middle of that, right? So, he was kind of my, so I knew he was going to be the next person that I worked with. And in the back of my head, I kept having this thought about like, there's more going on to this than just the one and done psychic mediumship, right? And that's kind of what has happened. All right, so before I tell you about the recording, just one other piece on the art, another art piece here that I need to let you in on as far as the story and, the progression that's happened is like, so, Jackson Pollock, made his presence known, big boom in my life, continuing to explore art. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. And the further I get into it, the more I realize, oh, there's this thing about being aware as an artist as far as the size of your art, like size matters, okay? And I began to wonder about like, well, what size of art do I resonate with most? And when I started asking this question, the small watercolor notebooks that I'm working with, like that seems good for sketching, but I've been having that feeling of like larger. And then the texture art that I've been doing, I've allowed myself to go from some experimental smaller canvases up to, like, I think the recent one I did was an 11 by 16, which is a pretty good jump up for me. And then I kept having this feeling of like, no, it's got to be larger. And finally I was like, well, what is my size of canvas, right? So, me, I got out my pendulum and I started pendulum checking through dimensions. And it turns out, folks, that my dimensional canvas that I am most connected with is a freaking 9 by 12. And I'm not talking 9 inch by 12 inch. I'm talking 9 foot by 12 foot. Now, I measured out the size of that. And like right now, that is way too large. But I could see myself getting to that. And so I was like, well, what's the most optimal size for me right now? You know what it is? It is a 6 by 9. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up purchasing some painter's drop cloths, like not canvas, because I'm not ready to put some money into expensive canvas. So I ordered painter's drop cloths, 6 by 9 size, 2 in one package. So I'm like, okay, great canvas to begin to experiment on. And no sooner did I have that canvas outside on the ground, because that's about the only place I can paint something that large right now. No sooner did I have that canvas outside on the ground than I was like, whoop, Jackson Pollock was right there. And he started hanging out over my shoulder and giving me specific art coaching instructions on how to proceed with a large size canvas. It was amazing. Like, that is a video in and of itself that I think I'm going to do at some point. So I'm telling you all of this so you understand that when you go listen to this recording, this psychic mediumship recording is coming from a place of, at this point, Jackson Pollock and we've got a working relationship across the veil with one another. It's crazy. It's funny. There's a lot of swearing that goes on between both of us because he's this, stubborn loggerhead, and so am I, and so we kind of bitch at one another, which is kind of fun. I enjoy that. But he's been walking me through my large canvas splatter art. I've got a large canvas. I think it's probably about 75% done, 80% done. It's not quite there. And in the meantime, he has been hanging out, like observing how a spiritual life works, how redemption works, how cleaning up karma works, how healing and transformation works. Like, he's been getting his own lessons. And so, folks, I think this is like next step, next level of like conscious work across the veil between two willing parties willing to work with one another. And it just goes to show, we know this, the people in the spiritual community know this, we know that when we get to the other side, the spiritual growth, healing, and development, it doesn't stop. It changes, it morphs, it's still there. And so, what I bring to you with this recording, now I'll tell you about this recording, what I bring to you with this recording is like, it's kind of something brand new. I've never watched anything quite like this. So in this recording, the first part of it, good God, Jackson Pollock gives a freaking workshop on like the life is art, art is life passions, whether, you know, whatever your passion is with whatever art is. Like, he gives a workshop on creative process, especially for three types of different people, three different areas. One is one is artist block. That's one. He addresses that. Number two is if you have been away from your art and you're coming back, he workshops that. And then if you are brand new to art, he talks about that. So he is like doing the philosophical, psychological, energetic, mindset, emotion set kind of space for those three different type of people. And good God, the man, he like workshops that thing pretty good. Now you got to be prepared. There is cussing in this video. Like, Kissinger was clean. Like, we were pretty clean about that. Not Jackson. He's got potty mouth. I've got potty mouth. And so there is swearing in different places. You just need to be prepared for that. Then once Jackson finished that workshop, he went on and he very deliberately, he's like, Dana, I want to talk about my life. I want to talk about my mistakes. I want to talk about learning and growing. And I specifically want to talk about it directed towards men. Like, he was talking from his straight white male place over on the other side of the veil, talking about what it had been like for him to be embodied in his lifetime, especially at the end of his life. And then what he's been doing and what he's been learning since he's been on the other side. And then between me and Jackson, like, I was able to see the field open up. And between the two of us, we shared some very interesting things going on in energy space with souls on the other side, us here on the planet, transformation happening. Like, it is one of the most amazing psychic mediumship experiences I've had in a very long time. Now, I've had all kinds of psychic mediumship experiences. They're all beautiful. They're all wonderful. They're all very unique. But this is next level stuff, guys. This is the kind of stuff where I'm like, ooh, we are really landed in 5D, because it's giving us access to stuff I hadn't even imagined before on the other side of the veil. So Jackson landed that for us as well. And then what was really interesting, I thought was so interesting, we got done and he was like, questions? Questions, anyone? Like, he wanted to continue to hang out and have a conversation. Now, he knew the channel was over and we were going to close it down, but I really do feel like there may be other parts of this conversation to continue to have with him. So if you get the video and you drop down into the comment space, please leave questions, because we may roll that into next psychic mediumship communications with Jackson. And, you know, you could ask about art or philosophy or mediumship. Like, you could ask whatever it is that you want to ask. But Jackson was not on a clock. Kissinger was on a clock. Like, you know, I had that feeling with Kissinger. He was like, are we done? Time for me to go. Jackson's hanging out. He's like, I got time. I want to hang out. I want to work with people. I want to help people. That's his MO right now. So this is me in my kind of like psychic mediumship journalistic space, especially with the art, reporting back to you with some of the new finds that I have got going on. So if you want to pick it up, it is in my link tree. It's in my Shopify. You can go to my website and there's a shop video tab. I'm going to begin to incorporate in a new website called danastovern.com. I'm working on that a little bit for the notable people thing. So that's pretty much what I've got for you for now. As far as who that next notable person psychic mediumship channel is with, I'm not quite sure. I can feel the clump of people. There is one person that's beginning to separate themselves from the crowd, but it's a little bit premature to answer that. I want to let it unfold just so I can be really clear about what's going on. And so, yeah, I really encourage you to drop down into the comments and share with me your thoughts about all of this. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. That's what I've got for you for now. And make sure you keep walking forward to meet those miracles along the way. And mwah, I will see you in my next video.